I'm speaking.
Gotta go.
Wait, let's do this.
No.
I'm not. Hey guys, James here,
Matt back with you.
and welcome along to our video series on Minding What Matters. Casual conversations between two friends who just happen to be psychologists as well, talking about, in a really brief and casual way, mental health and well-being, and some of the things that maybe we can do or we should think about during this time of COVID. Well, welcome again, and today's topic is parenting during tough times.
I'm Matt. We have James here, and I'm very excited to introduce Mr. Paul Prangley with us. Welcome, Paul.
Howdy.
Now, I'm very excited to have Paul here because Paul has helped me a lot in my journey as a psychologist. He has been a very good mentor and friend to myself. And a few things I really admire about you, Paul, and everybody else, is that you have an incredible patience and encouragement towards difficult people. So I've been with Paul as he's working with very challenging people, and he's been so patient and encouraging and can usually find positives in what they say. And so that's been something that's been really great for me to see, and encouragement for me. So there you go, Paul. That's something I've always admired about you.
Well, thank you for that, sir. Thank you very much.
And I'm
So,
certainly
Paul,
excited as well to have you along as a father of two young children at the moment, staying in our own little bubble. I'm looking forward to hearing some of your wise words today.
Good one, James. Thanks.
Paul, you've had a wealth of experience in both working for the courts, working in various New Zealand government departments, as well as overseas governments. You've worked in Brunei, for example, for 6 years, helping them set up their special education system. And so you're a wealth of knowledge. And today's topic, as James said, is being a parent in tough times. So, Paul, what's it like to be a parent during a crazy time like this COVID lockdown?
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Because there's no textbook that we can refer to say, do this, do that. So we go back to basics, really. And I look at the psychology of modeling and the psychology of the parent trying to cope, at least showing the kids that they can cope anyway. And so the first thing I would say about being a parent in tough times is look after yourself first. You're obviously going to look after the children, but get your own ducks in a row. Try and keep some sort of routine. That always helps. Try and get up and actually get dressed. It's really tempting during the first little time of any tough time or lockdown like we've got now to just sort of schlep around and not have too much of a routine. Fine, that's how we sort of blow our cobwebs out. But as we're recording this today, we're sort of in the middle of this lockdown, and so it's going to get hard yards for the next few weeks while the novelty's worn off, right? People are in the real difficult time. So I think a little bit of organisation for you as the adult, as the parent, would be the first step to helping you cope. So get up, get dressed, have a routine in the morning, get the kids up and give them some breakfast or whatever, spend some time with them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the modelling aspect, that if you are finding it really tough and you're saying, oh, doom and gloom, that'll pass over to the kids. And you can't explain that to them particularly well, particularly little ones maybe like yours, James. You can't explain the meaning of lockdown and why we're doing it and all of that. They're going on the emotion that they are seeing from you. So again, if you can talk to other adults and discuss things out of the kids' hearing, so that when you're in the kids' presence, you're as together as you can be, that's going to make it infinitely easier. Right? The kids, again, they go in that emotional climate rather than the facts and figures. And so if they see you coping, if they see you, sort of being fairly reasonable, you can be upset occasionally. That's pretty normal. But mostly if you're coping, they're going to cope. And that's a really good thing.
And it sounds like in that space that it's not about pretending everything's okay and everything's fine, and you're just, but just being aware of how you respond to your own stress and how that
Sure.
is reflected to your children.
Mm-hmm. And I think you might have reminded me about resilience there, that kids can see us as adults upset sometimes or frustrated at sometimes. As long as we talk to them and say, yep, I'm having a real hard time, but let's go read a book. That'll make me feel happy. So you give them an idea of what you're feeling, but also a solution. Also, how can we move on, right? So you're identifying the feeling, but you're not wallowing in it. You're moving on to do, oh, let's build some Lego. That'll be really fun. That always makes me feel good. Those sort of statements are good for whatever age kids you've got. And they see, oh, okay, it's okay to be upset, but the next step is to move on and do something constructive, do something that we enjoy, and spend time together. Yeah. Okay. Which leads me on to the next thing I was thinking about, which is spending time with the kids. The household cleaning and the mowing the lawn and all of that. Now that is not quite as important in these current days as spending time and being a good role model and just talking with the kids and having fun with them. I always try and reach my inner child a lot of the time. I love playing with little kids because that's the bit of me that I enjoy the most, so I can roll around on the floor and play Lego and, be Barbie or whatever the last little person wanted me to do, my little niece. So that sort of stuff's really good, and you're approaching the kids at their level and on their topics that they know something about. And they can tell you how to be Barbie or how to be the dinosaur or whatever, and you can, oh, okay, I'll do that. But the interaction with kids is just great. And if the parent can have a basic routine, but not let that routine get in the way of spending quality time with the kids, I think, again, that's the next stage of moving on through this time. And it gives the kids a sense, again, of stability and security, that you're doing the things that please them. Yeah.
Paul, that sounds like a real juggling act in a way, because you're trying to juggle all these different things. You're trying to juggle what the kids are interested in, your own emotions and thoughts, what's happening for you, your worries, but you're also trying to have some kind of structure. What are some common problems where those balls might collide?
Yeah, I think if we're overly structured, that's one of the first areas I've honestly noted this week. I talked to a couple of people this week who have tried to put too much of a structure in, and that then becomes a barrier rather than a help. So basic things like eating at relatively regular intervals and getting up and getting dressed and cleaning your teeth in the morning, those sorts of things are pretty quick to do, but it's good to do them. And then you spend the majority of your day doing things that will either please the kids or they'll be interested in, or you can just sit there and you're both reading your own books. You've got, I don't know, War and Peace, and the kids got The Hungry Caterpillar, but you're both reading at the same time. And those sorts of modelling.
I prefer Garfield in those times.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Something a little bit lower.
That's quite good. So not as much highbrow. Yeah. I think it becomes a problem if you get too caught up with the organisation. I think you've got to go with the feeling, and you've got to go with the enjoyment of sort of being together, but still have just a little bit of that structure in behind just to support it all. Right? The extreme is probably something to talk about. If you had no system whatsoever, you just ate whenever you felt hungry and you didn't get dressed and all of that, it's fun for a little while, but it does tend to not help the kids, because they need a set of routines, like a skeleton, to hang their day on. And it's settling for them to know that, oh, we do this and we do this and this, and then we have free time to play, right? So I guess that's the balancing act. Dealing with your own emotions, really important. And I think it's important to try and contact other adults. If they're not living in your bubble with you, at least ring them up or do a Zoom or a Skype or whatever, to talk to people about adult things. So again, it's that trying to find a balance in your life, and sometimes there's so many competing needs in your life that's hard to find, but working on finding it is an exercise all in itself. And I think a lot of people are really happy that they've worked on it,
Paul, what would you say to somebody who said something like, well, I actually share quite a lot with my kids because I'm not going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to be open and honest.
Yeah.
You know, I can treat
Yeah.
them as, you know, someone who can understand these things. And
And I think in principle, that's fair enough. But in practice, a lot of the concepts that we talk about as adults, and again, about COVID-19 or about lockdown, you know, our business is going down the tubes because we can't sell our flowers or whatever. A lot of those things are very real pressures that kids don't have the depth of conceptual knowledge or experience of life to deal with well. And they don't get the facts that you're talking about. They get the emotion that you're talking about it with. So if you're angry or upset relatively frequently, they're not worried about what you're angry or upset about. They just feel the pressure from that feeling. So if you're going to talk to kids about things, try and couch it in language that they will understand. And again, try and be positive and leave them with a hopeful feeling at the end. Right? It is a pretty drastic time. There's no denying it. You know, I've got a daughter living in Spain at the moment, and I worry every minute of every day about her. But it's not something that I can control. It's not something that I can do anything about. So I try and look for every couple of days we do a FaceTime call with each other, and she tells me all the good stuff that's happening. She shows me a picture out the window about how long the line is outside the supermarket down the road, and those sorts of things. Okay, well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. So what I'm trying, if I was explaining these things to any grandchild or whatever I had here, I'd be saying, oh, Auntie Charlotte's in Spain and she's got a real cool supermarket outside. So I'm telling them about the facts, but I'm couching it in terms that they can understand and that they're not caught up with adult emotional concerns that they honestly don't understand. So when you're talking with kids, sure, be honest, but put it in language and in an emotional, at an emotional level that they're going to understand. And always finish off with a positive, hopeful sort of statement so that they stay positive, even in dark times, really.
Great. And Paul, what would you like? I see the utility in that and being able to, the way in which you communicate. But one of the struggles that I've heard a lot recently is people trying to take on this new role almost as a teacher in their home, because you know, education still needs to go ahead, and they're trying to manage their children's education. But do you have any comments on that in regards to, I suppose, managing the difficulty and kind of keeping them on task during this, you know, unique set of situations versus kind of managing the relationship as a parent?
Yeah. I think, first of all, throw away that idea that you've got to be the teacher, because in the next few days, in the next little while, we'll be hearing about mechanisms that the schools are going to use from next week with online things. There's going to be a TV channel. I think it's 2+1. I think it's going to be a TV channel from 9 till 3 with all sorts of educational material on it. So we're removing from the parent the need to be the teacher, but the parent can still do teaching by doing something that the kid really likes and is interesting, and then you can teach the child to persevere with something if it's something that they quite like. It's difficult if you're trying to get them to do 2 hours of times tables. You know, I'd balk at that too. But if it was 2 hours of painting and making construction out of cardboard and seeing how much weight you can put on an egg, whatever, those sorts of scientific type experiments are really fun. They're teaching you a whole lot, but it's good relationship wise. All right, so don't try and be the teacher and teach quadratic equations and worry about those real technical teaching things. Try and be the teacher who teaches the child to stick with a task, an enjoyable task, for a reasonable period of time, get some sort of resolution to it, then we'll go and have some enjoyment, you know, some game or something afterwards. That is the best level to be as a teacher at the moment. And then again, there are mechanisms which are, some are here and some are on their way very imminently, that will deal with the technical parts of teaching, and the parents will be sort of let off the hook, really. But you don't want to ruin the relationship with your child by trying to force them to do too much technical learning.
Great.
The fun stuff is what you do as a parent, and the rest of that can be caught up, and we're not going to be in this situation hopefully for too long, and kids can catch up when they get back to school or as soon as the online stuff's available.
So at its core, Paul, it sounds like you're talking about two things there. One is setting realistic expectations for the parent. And that goes both ways in terms of that structure you're talking about. No, don't be too structured, but don't be too unstructured.
Exactly.
And prioritizing the relationship and maybe what you can do as a parent. The pressure's not on you to be their sole teacher.
Sure.
This is an unprecedented time. Children can always catch up later. Actually, the research talks a little bit about that within reason. You know, there's a
Yep.
But you're saying prioritize that relationship. And another
Absolutely.
thing that you're really saying, which is something James and I have been talking about, is the importance of reframing things or changing the language that you use with yourself. But you're talking about, as you were saying, change the language that you use with the children. What does that do to the parent as they're reframing things?
Honestly, quite a few people have talked to me and said it actually makes it easier for them to understand. If you have to figure out a big thing that's going on in your head and you're trying to explain it to a child or a younger person, you have to filter it through your brain systems and find easier language, more simple concepts. And all of a sudden, a lot of parents say, oh, I had a aha sort of moment. I'm trying to explain it, trying to figure out what it means, and cutting it down to its basic simplicity actually helped me as well. So it may take a bit of thinking, it may take a bit of practice to do that successfully, but you don't have to do it every time. Just try your hardest to put it in language that a kid might understand, and then watch out for the emotional climate that you're presenting it with. You know, I think it actually would help both sides of the relationship, really, and it's worth putting the effort in, really.
What's it like for, I guess, if you're a solo parent and you're managing children in this time, what are the challenges facing a solo parent versus the challenges facing co-parenting arrangements?
Sure. Well, you're on all the time, aren't you? You're never off stage as a solo parent. So it's really important to try and develop some activities, some things that the children can do independently, and you have your time. And a lot of parents that I've dealt with through the courts, we've agreed that they say to the kids, okay, we've got from 4 till 5:30 to do this, but then it's mum's or dad's time. You guys read your book and do your colouring, and I've just got to do my thing for just half an hour, and then we'll come back. There's a brilliant book, and I can't remember the author's name, but it's called 5 Minutes Peace, and it's about Mama Elephant who's got these 5 or 6 kids running around, and she's just about to sit and read a book, and someone jumps on her back and says, oh, I want to have a piggyback or whatever. It's a lovely book for kids, which shows how important it is that parents have a little bit of time to themselves. So if you do it nicely and if you structure it well, as a solo parent, it's really good to spend time with the kids, but also budget in time for yourself and tell the kids, get the kids to practice. Start off with just 5 minutes and make it up to 10 minutes and 15, so that you get half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, a couple of times a day, just a bit of peace. And that then re-energizes you to work with the kids later. You know? That is one of the big pressures and difficulties for solo parents, is that you're never off duty, really. So to purposely build in time to be off duty and get everybody to agree, it's worth the effort to sort of build it up, I think.
And I imagine if you're someone that's starting to implement that, whether you're solo or co-parenting, that whenever you're trying to implement new strategies within a home system, often you get a bit of kickback, don't you? Do you have any comments to that?
Just to make it fun, I'm going to start off with 1 minute, and I'll see if I can have 1 minute peace. Right, here's my watch, go. And then if they jump in, oh no, I have to start again, and make it kind of like a game. when they do succeed in doing a minute or 5 minutes, everybody gets a reward. Brilliant, I'm going to read you a story now because you've been so good. I've been so pleased about that. So I think the positive reinforcement side of it pays quite big dividends here, right? Again, you want to get something running, but you don't have to be so serious and so organized about it that you cause upset. So make it a game, make it fun, start off little and gradually build it up. And then it becomes part of the behavior of the family. And everybody knows that mum's not doing it just to get rid of me. Mum's doing it because she just needs a little bit of 5 minutes, or dad or whomever, a little bit of 5 minutes. And as soon as they finish that, we're going to have fun again. So if you take that principle and do things to build that principle up, it tends to probably work anyway. You're right, there will be kickbacks. And often when kids can't have your time, that's when they want it the most. But you work through that and you make it fun. You have some sort of reward afterwards, as I said, like reading a story or something, and build it up.
Okay.
Paul, you spoke of the difficulties facing solo parents, and particularly time and needing to have your own time. What are some of the difficulties during this time period that co-parenting situations might have?
If people want to have their own time at the same time, okay, so mum and dad or two adults have to do something at the same time, that can cause problems. And so you roster it out a little bit. And sometimes I've always been relatively successful by just writing myself little notes and writing down a little bit of a roster time, right? You can have from 10 till 3 and I'll have from 3 till 5, whatever you do. But talking about it, organizing it sort of semi-formally, at least writing things down anyway and seeing how well you can stick to it, that works really well. Sometimes if the co-parents disagree with one another about stuff, I think we have to have a pre-arranged either signal or agreement that we won't argue too much about it in front of the kids, right? Because while that's honest, back to the comment before, I'm going to tell the kids because it's real, fair enough. But again, kids really don't like seeing their parents arguing because you're supposed to be their rock. In their mind, you're the stable people. And if you're not getting on very well, what's happening to my whole world? So there might be emotional things at times, fair enough, but then you go back to the kids, oh, sorry, we worked it out, your mum and I are friends again now, and that sort of thing. That works good, works well. But if you can not have emotional outbursts in front of the kids as much as possible, that would be the better idea, right? So talking about it, having a little signal, oh, can I just see you in the garage just for a second? That sort of thing. And then you can argue the toss which way you like. But in front of the kids is the sort of minefield part, really. So co-parenting, you're stuck together a lot, the whole of your routines, you're not going to work, you're not going out, whatever you were doing. And so you're on edge as well. So realize that. And I saw a really neat statement the other day. It says, try not to show up to every argument you're invited to. And I love that. We're in relationships and we do disagree about things, but sometimes you have to be kind and think, okay, well, that's her or his opinion. I'll talk about it later. So, okay, yeah, well, let's talk about that later, but let's get on with this now, right? So you can defer things. I guess, long ramble way around, that would be my thoughts, that keep emotions to yourselves. That's an adult thing. Try and do that in your own time. Have signals where you can sort of exit a breather out of the kids' space and come back. Be honest with the kids, but also, again, have that final statement that, yeah, okay, we did have a bit of an upset, but mum and me are real good friends now. We've sorted it out. Isn't that great? Right, let's go read a story. So again, positive and then distract to something really good. And then model for the kids how you hope their relationships would be. Talk to one another as nicely as you can.
So, Paul, a lot of what you're talking about seems to require a bit of a game plan between parents, or even just if you're a solo parent, on how to attack the day, how to attack the week, what's going to happen.
I think it does, and that's where adult contact's really important. We could exist in a bubble without contact, I guess, but it's better and more enjoyable for us as the adults, as the sort of parenting people in the whole deal, if we talk to other people. So it's really good to talk to people over the internet or by phone or something, sort of keep up with your contacts that you make at work or at shopping or whatever you do during the day, and talk those things through with them. You don't have to take everybody's advice, but just the process of talking to somebody about it works out in your head. You know, you're processing this stuff. I think using language puts a subconscious processing system in our head in gear, and so we talk about it. Even though we've finished talking about it and we're going to cook tea or something, as we're cooking tea, our subconscious is still thinking about that, and we'll come up with some really good answers. So I think, yeah, pre-organisation, some sort of game plan is really good to do. So you think through it as a game plan, but you also talk about it with your friends and neighbours and contacts. What do you do in this situation? And if they tell me this, I think, oh, grief, I'm not going to do that. But at least I know what I'm not going to do. You know, so any information is good information. You don't have to judge anybody or anything, but just by talking about it, you start working out for yourself what suits you and your family and your routines and your approach to life, right? And with a game plan, that means your approaches to your kids will be a lot more thought through, a lot more sound, and that's got to be good. The kids will sort of notice that. I think further to that, a lot of news and a lot of information is coming out about the current situation and then about the world in general, you know, climate change and all of the things that is worrying us even without COVID-19. I think pick your time on the news. Don't spend your whole time searching for information and worrying about what this person says or that person says, because the news by its very nature is spectacular. You know, they're going for effect. So they'll report a lot of stuff, but they don't report the good stuff. So I personally spend quite a lot of time just looking for the good things, the good news stories, talking to people about, you know, so-and-so who helped the old lady next door to get her groceries. That sort of thing is really good to hear as well, to keep a balance in your head. Because when we're stuck here without, particularly our solo parents, without too much other adult contact, your brain makes up the rest. So I think spend a bit of time looking for the good, hearing, talking about the good information, and it'll balance out your sort of the sort of worries in your head, which will then make you approach the kids better, and you'll have a much better time. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
right. Paul, I've appreciated a lot of the tips and that you've kind of given us, and I like some of those ideas of, you know, managing your expectations, try not to, you know, understanding there's no textbook for this, that, hey, kind of like the airplane where the oxygen mask falls down, we need to make sure that we're looking after ourselves in the first instance, so that we've got energy and something else left over to actually give back to our children, and to make sure that we're prioritizing our relationship over maybe some of those expectations of what should or shouldn't be done. Just as we finish up, what would you say is maybe the top 3 tips, or you can as many as you want really, to manage challenging child behaviors, whether it's, I know that there's a wide range of ages from, you know, it's different when you're managing a 3-year-old to a 17-year-old, but what would you say maybe a couple of tips to managing, you know, challenging child
behavior? Number 1, don't take it personally, right? Very, very rarely are the kids actually getting at you. And number 2, realize that it's an emotional thing for the child. They're learning how to cope with their emotions, how to cope with their disappointment. They're upset that they didn't get the big apple, somebody else got it, all that sort of stuff. So realize, A, it's not personal, and B, it's a bit of an emotional thing. So what I'm trying to do with my child is help them with emotional regulation. And then the next thing is don't worry too much. I'm almost losing my train of thought here. Don't worry too much about what they're doing because it's done for a reason. So I don't look at what they're doing so much as why are they doing it? What are they trying to get out of this? And most child behavior is to either get something or avoid something. So if a child, for example, is saying rude words, so that, and you say, oh, I wouldn't say that. You've got to think, is that child saying rude words just to get my attention? And therefore, you're promoting him or her saying more bad words because you're giving them attention, right? Or is it because I'm modeling badly and I'm saying those words, so I have to cut down my language so they don't model it backwards to me, right? So think about why is the child doing that behavior, and that will help you get through dealing with that behavior. And you might be able to distract them onto something else. If they are pinching their brother's food, maybe you have a look and you say, oh, actually, yeah, he's got a Marmite sandwich and the brother's got a peanut butter one, so maybe he likes peanut butter. So the next time I give him peanut butter, and you'll probably find the behavior stops and you don't have to tell him off for it, all right? So just to recap, I guess, one, it's not personal, don't take it personally. It's a child trying to figure out how their emotions work. And when you know that, you can then figure out, why is the child doing this? Is it to get something or to avoid something? And if I can figure that out, then I can preempt it and give them that stuff in the first place so they don't have to fight for it, or not let them do something so that they don't have to avoid it. That would be my sort of 3 top tips anyway for behavior.
Yeah, great.
See it as a system rather than a personal attack.
Well, Paul, this is it's been a great chat, and we thank you so much for your time today.
You.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, and I wish you lots of luck with this series. It's really good, and I'm pleased that you're able to do that sort of to help people out, because one of my comments before, we've got to talk about this stuff so that we can figure out in our own head how we can do it. So this is a great way of helping people do that. So good on you.
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciate your time and your the depth of knowledge you have. So I'll certainly take on board a couple of things from what you said as well. Try them out this week, see how we go.
Exactly, yeah. Good on you.
All right, guys, leave us a comment if you have any comments, and email us on the link below if you need to. It's been great. Until next time.
Kia ora. See you later. Yeah.